Hello, everybody, and welcome to Virtual TrekCon with Sirach Lofton.
Hello, hello.
We are joined today by our very special guest, Mr. Richard Arnold. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Richard
Arnold.
The great. Richard was a research consultant on many episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation. Is that right?
Yeah, well, the first 5 seasons plus until Gene died.
Okay. Can you tell everybody what that was about? What your job entailed?
Oh wow! How far back do you want me to go?
All the way, right, Sirach?
Yeah.
I'll try not to make it too long. I was a fan of the original series. We moved to St. Louis from Vancouver, where I was born, in the summer of 1969, and that summer, the World Science Fiction Convention was there in St. Louis. So I attended my very first convention. It was from that point, everything was geared towards the next convention. And I attended several a year until I think it was the Worldcon in 71, where the organizers were so sick of the Star Trek fans asking for programming that they said, if you want that, put on your own conventions. So a group of fans got together and put on the very first All Star Trek convention in New York in January of 1972. I went to that. That's where I met a lot of the people who were like Gene Roddenberry and Majel Barrett, who were actually involved in the series. And I started communicating with Gene. In fact, I have a letter up on the wall here from him to my address in St. Louis.
Wow.
And started going to conventions out in LA and visiting Gene while I was there at Universal and at Warner Brothers, where he was doing various pilots, TV shows. And eventually in 1974, I moved to LA for several reasons. But I seem to have more friends there than in St. Louis. And I really liked it in LA. So there was no job offer or anything, but I was friendly with Gene. I'd gotten to know his assistant, Susan Sackett. I was running Grace Lee Whitney's fan club out of a spare room in Gene's offices. And I eventually had my name over the door. I had my own phone extension. I had an overhead number to charge things to, office supplies and so on. And eventually, after 10 years, Gene decided they should hire me, the studio. And Gene always covered everything, but he wanted the studio to start paying me a salary.
It was a 10-year internship then, huh?
Yeah, from 1976 to 86. That summer, and Gene could tell, I'd had to quit my real job, which I'd been working at the Bonaventure Hotel for 8.5 years, because all of my time was being consumed by Star Trek. And my boss at the hotel gave me an ultimatum. So I said, Star Trek, I mean, come on, it's more important to me. So I left the hotel, started working full time. I already had my office and a parking spot and everything else. And it was in time for the 20th anniversary of the original series, the development of Star Trek The Next Generation, and everything else that was going on at that time, Star Trek 4, etc. So, yeah, I'm going to cough. Sorry.
It's all right. Sirach coughs a lot, too.
Dry throat. At least I don't do what Gene used to always do, which is, keep his hands off his face. So, I was there at this amazing time. I already knew all of the original series cast. Once the Next Generation began, obviously I got to know all of that cast, and the first 6 movies. Okay, my daily routine was to try and get in before Gene, get the coffee started, get the mail, sort, get everything ready to go over to the set, answer the phone calls, deal with the mail. No computers back then, no internet, nothing like that. And whatever requests there were from the 5 divisions I was working with.
Science, medical, operations, engineering, command.
Feature division, television, merchandising and licensing, and so on. It was all the different areas that dealt with Star Trek in some way. Some more than others, obviously. Merchandising and licensing took up a lot of my time. In order to get me hired, what the studio did was they got all those different areas to pay part of my salary. So none of them felt like they were having to spend too much. One of the complaints when they hired me was that for all those years, they'd gotten it for free. They'd gotten the milk for free, so why should they buy the cow? So that's well, Gene told them, you have to, or he leaves. So, yeah. And yeah, there were times where one division would say he's not working for us as much as he's working for the others. But no, the studio, fortunately I had some people who supported me. So I did that for the next, from 86 to 91, a little over 5 years.
Sounds
Gene
like you're
passed
doing
in October of 91.
Sounds like you're doing a lot more than just research consultant then, right?
Well, they needed a title for me. They didn't even know what to call me. Resident Trekkie is what I had been up until then, but Gene didn't think that was quite good enough. So they started calling me the archivist, but it turns out that's a union position. So rather than join the union, because what I did was so different from any other archivist, they were going to call me consultant. But on the films at that point, Next Gen hadn't started yet. Gene was the executive consultant, so he decided I should be research consultant. So that's why I had the title. But I yes, I would go through every script. I worked a lot with the writers. I certainly, worked with the actors if they had any questions. Guest stars occasionally would need. I would go down to the set, try and help them understand what the hell it was they were getting. Some of them had no idea what they were getting. Star Trek's different from most TV shows. An actor being told you're a Cardassian, what the hell does that mean? So you have to kind of explain what it is that they're doing. And some people got it right away, others didn't, especially method actors, they couldn't get a grasp on it. And I remember when they were shooting Star Trek the Motion Picture, the scene that they shot in the parking lot at Paramount. Planet Vulcan, this huge foot, Spock going through the Kolinar ceremony, and the actress playing the Vulcan priestess had no idea what the hell a Vulcan mind meld was. And I went over there with some artwork I had of, Spock doing it to McCoy and so on. She still couldn't get it. So finally, Leonard switched positions with her, and he did it to her. And finally she understood what she was doing. But I mean, that's how, pardon me for saying this, alien it can be for some of these actors. They just have no idea what it is. Others, thank God, get it. Patrick Stewart, he never really admits this, but he used to watch it with his kids. I won't say he was a fan, but he certainly was familiar with it. In an episode during the first season, Conspiracy, I think, they're on Earth, first time in Star Trek's history where they're actually on Earth, and they're dealing with these alien creatures. Henry Darrow was playing a Vulcan,
Mhm.
an admiral. And in the script, it says he and Picard greet each other and shake hands. And Patrick knew that that was wrong and called me down to the set and said, what is it that the Vulcans do when they meet somebody? Go like that. So there you go. Some actors know, some actors have an idea, and others completely lost. So I never knew on a daily basis what I was going to be doing, and a single phone call could change my whole day. Reading all the books was part of it. I hated it. Reading all the print for Gene, who had, so much to do already. He didn't have time to read all the book proposals and all the various drafts and everything else. He approved all the 3D stuff. He couldn't do the print, so that became my responsibility. So yeah, there was various things that I had to do, and I was going to the conventions. My biggest year was 42 conventions.
Jeez.
Wow.
Wasn't home a lot on weekends, and I was taking homework with me. Books that had to be read and so on. So yeah, it was very, trying to describe it simply to somebody, not easy.
Yeah, Sirach knows all about the fact that it's basically like a different language when you're learning Star Trek lines. I mean, you need a translator. It sounds like that's what you were for the new actors that would come in, or maybe even directors that would come in.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And writers, by the way. A lot of writers, kind of clueless, didn't understand, the rules. And Gene had a lot of rules. Thank God for Michael Piller, because he got it right away. Up until Michael, it was something of a battleground in the writing department. And Gene having to rewrite a lot, which he didn't enjoy, but it had to be done. And he was getting on. I remember the first episode, they had to beam down to the Farpoint station.
Right.
And the directors absolutely lost. How do you beam people? How do you direct them? So Bob Justman went over and he said, okay, you roll the camera, they step in, you count to 7, you keep rolling, they step out, you keep rolling, and then you cut. And then, the special effects technicians cut out that little bit, 7, the beat, and then they put in the effect there. So very simple, nice trick, but if you've never had to direct a beaming sequence, you have no idea.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Was going to the conventions a part of your job, or was it part of just recreation for you?
Yeah, Gene felt that the show should be represented directly with the fans. So I got to go through all the art that was shot on the set, the photographer who was there for every episode, and go through and pull slides, to show at the conventions in a slide projector. And couldn't give away the plots of the upcoming episodes, obviously. We could tease them. And I used to do a lot of behind-the-scenes shots. I always loved to pull the behind-the-scenes shots because they could be fun. And because he felt that, because some of it was out of my own pocket at that point, he set up a meeting with the front office over in the admin building at Paramount. And I felt the only way I could really explain what I did was to do a presentation. And I did my usual talk, and then I opened it up for Q&A, and I was surprised there were actually a few questions. And then I showed the slides, and I made sure that I had some humorous stuff in there. And it went over really well. And they agreed, and they covered air, hotel, all expenses. It was great. So, yeah, it became fully a part of the job.
Wow, great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you, you're talking about Patrick Stewart a little bit ago. Did you find him to be the most devoted or fluent in Star Trek of the actors, or was there somebody that was even more into that?
he was the one who took it most seriously. I'm sure you know the stories of the first season.
Yeah.
Of the rest of the cast having fun, clowning around, waiting until the word action. And he thought that they really needed to become more serious, and he chastised them. And
We're
they
not
were
here
all,
to have
"Oh,
fun, damn
Patrick."
it.
Yeah, come on, Patrick, ease up, But I mean, eventually he did, and he became actually kind of funny. And I would take visitors over to the set 4 times a day generally.
Wow.
Yeah, like 10 and noon and 2 and 4. And that could be anything from contestants from TV stations or winners, sponsors, guests of the actors or the studio executives, and occasionally VIPs who requested a visit. And I would never know who it was going to be. I took around Ronald Reagan and AC Lyles came along.
Was he president at the time?
He was former president.
Okay.
Yeah. Although everybody still called him Mr. President. And there was his security, Secret Service. There was the studio security. And there was, I want to say that LAPD as well. There was so much security, it was ridiculous, which made it a little difficult. But we got through it all, and then we got into what was Data's quarters, which in the movies had been Kirk's quarters. And instead of going back out into the hallway, we went out the back to where the holodeck was. And the security, who were all out in the hallway, suddenly realized we weren't coming back out. And they, were piling into each other through that small doorway to get through and catch up with us. As much as I was kind of expecting not to like him because of his politics, I found him absolutely charming and funny. And when we got to stage 16, which, our planet stage, the Klingon High Council chamber was built. And there were loads of Klingons. And of course, they're all standing around, fascinated by the president being there. And afterwards, somebody asked him, what did you think of the Klingons? And he said, I liked the Klingons. They reminded me of Congress. Yeah. There was a special moment. Gene, definitely a Democrat, wanted to be there. And he came over to 16 once we got there. And Chooch, Charlie Russo, set up his chair. And he came in and sat down, put his cane next to him. And when Ronald Reagan started coming over, Gene was starting to get up and he knocked his cane down. And Ronald Reagan stepped forward, crouched down, picked it up and handed it to him. And later he said, at that moment, I felt as though I was being knighted. Isn't that a nice thing to say? Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, everybody was impressed with him. Brent Spiner had said ahead of time, when I told everybody I was going to be bringing him over the next day, he said, if I'm working and he comes on the set, I'll leave. All right, Brent, fine. It turned out Brent wasn't working. He came in on his day off to be there. And he actually spoke to Ronald Reagan more than any of them. So yeah, it was kind of a special day. I took around sports figures. I took around certainly politicians, other actors.
Well, hang on one second. When you said sports figures, Sirach and I had our ears perk up there. Can you tell us who?
Basketball players, football players. I'm not a sports person, so I remember specific. I mean, I would bring people around, and the actors on the set would be really blown away that I was taking them around. And I would be like, well, I don't even know who they are. But I remember Eddie Rabbitt, country and western singer, was a huge fan, and had to be on, sit in the captain's chair, stand on the transporter platform, etc. yeah, a lot of people, they tried to hide how big a fan. Like Whoopi, good God, I took her around for her first visit. She was like a little kid, and that was before she started working on the show.
Right.
So, yeah, sometimes special requests, like I think his first name was Ryan, who had, I want to say, AIDS and was dying from it, and he was in a wheelchair. Do you remember this kid? And they had to lift him out of his wheelchair to put him in the captain's chair. There was one very happy little kid. I was there when Stephen Hawking was there.
Wow.
But I wasn't on the set. Although I arranged for the visit, I called Rick. Rick said, absolutely, I'll come down if I can. And Eleanor, his assistant, when they took him out of his chair, of course, he was incommunicado at that point. And he sat there, I hate to say this, with a shit-eating grin and drooling until he started blinking rapidly, and she knew that was the time, and they put him back in his chair. But yeah, he was, a huge fan. And at a function that night at the studio, he had pre-recorded into his computer, I would like to appear in an episode of Star Trek. And he would wheel himself in front of anybody standing still and play that.
Yes, and that's awesome.
The next day, I called Rick and he said, I know, I've heard from like 12 people already. And he worked out a scene for it. And to this day, he's the only person who ever played himself.
That's right.
In a Star Trek episode.
That's right. For everybody listening in, there was a scene in Next Generation where I believe it was Data was doing a holodeck poker game. And so he had like the greatest scientific mind. There was Isaac Asimov. There was Albert Einstein. I think they had to get actors to play
Isaac Newton.
Yeah, Isaac Newton. Sorry, that they had to get actors for those guys that died, 20 or 200 years ago. Yeah. But Stephen Hawking to this day is the only one that got to play himself.
Yeah.
Wow. Was Ronald Reagan a fan? Is that why he asked to come down to the set?
I won't say that he was a fan per se, but A.C. Lyles, who had arranged for his visit to the studio and was an old friend. In fact, Ronald Reagan was one of his best men. His wedding. He wanted him to come to the Star Trek sets. I don't know if he asked to see them or if AC gave him a list of, here's the current shows, but we got to be one of the few sound stages that he went to. So he was very funny about, he had actually never worked at Paramount, but somebody had said when everybody was gathered around, do you remember working here as an actor back in the 40s or whatever. And he started to tell a story and he stopped. And he's just standing there with his head shaking slightly. And everyone's like, oh, shit. And he said, I'm sorry. I have that condition where I can't remember things. What's that called? And I swear to God, everybody in unison said, Alzheimer's. And it almost echoed. And he waited while we all just felt horrible for a second. And then he said, oh, that's right, Alzheimer's, but I have Irish Alzheimer's. And everybody's like, what? He said, I forget everything but a grudge. It was a joke. He set us up.
I thought he was going to say, I forget everything after I drink whiskey.
A couple of years later, he really did have it. So, yeah. No, I thought he was absolutely charming. Yeah.
What was the first moment like when you met Gene? Did you guys hit it off right away, or were you pitching yourself to him?
When he and Majel arrived at the committee suite at the Statler Hilton Hotel in New York, I had come up by bus, and I had been helping stuff all the envelopes, bags. Back when you got a program, you got goodies, you got all the stuff. It's not like Creation. And
we love you, Creation.
Yeah. By the time Gene and Majel got there, I was really tired. And I recognized Majel immediately because she still looked very much like Nurse Chapel. This is only 3 years later. And you know, they were going to talk with everybody, and I went into the bedroom of the suite, and I laid back on the bed. And the next thing I know, somebody's shaking my leg, and it was Gene who'd come in to use the bathroom. And he asked if I was okay, and I said, "Yeah, I'm just, really tired from the trip here." And at this point, I didn't know who he was. Nobody had ever seen him. He was a name on the screen, so I just assumed he was Mr. Barrett, Majel's husband. Okay, I was a kid at this point. And the next day, I was down in the ballroom. They were about to start the programming, and I was filling some jugs with water and ice, putting glasses out on the stage. And here he comes in the wings. And I'm kind of wondering, is Majel about to show up? And he and I were just chatting, and then, and very pleasant. They said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the creator and producer of Star Trek, Mr. Gene Roddenberry." And I'm like, oh, God. And he went out on stage. I was so embarrassed. And later afterwards, I was apologizing, and he was amused by it. And at the end of the convention, gave me his address, home address. And that's when we started a correspondence. So I never pitched myself because there was never a job. It took 10 years for there to, or 12 years. Sorry, from that convention, it was 14 years.
Wow.
Before there was ever actually a job. So everything that happened, just right place, right time, good memory, which is, I think, why Gene appreciated having me around, because instead of Susan having to dig through 79 scripts or something like that, he could call out a question and I could just answer it. So I became kind of handy. Somebody once said when they called me down to a writer's meeting, and Gene was asking me a question, none of the writers knew the original series well enough, and I just answered it. It was about Return of the Archons. I happen to remember that. And Gene was trying to remember the name of the character, and he said Landau, and I said Martin Landau was never in Star Trek, and he said no. All the zombies walked around. I said, Landru, Return of the Archons, episode 22.
Oh.
And he said, all right, thank you. And as I'm walking out, one of the writers said, Gene, what's it like to have your memory outside of your body walking around?
You were his portable memory.
Yeah, he said it's sort of convenient. It keeps my mind free for the important things. Kind of a slap in the face, but okay. It got me a job, yeah.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Cirroc.
No, I was just going to say he was like a walking memory alpha, or you're like a walking
before
memory.
there was, again, the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, now anybody could just, put it on and get their answer. Back then, no. I remember Eddie Murphy's writers calling me when he was working on, was it The Perfect Gentleman? And Eddie wanted there to be a scene where he walks into the house and he's walking by the den and the TV's on and there's a Star Trek episode running. And the character prides himself on being able to name a Star Trek episode within 5 seconds of seeing it. He knows what it is, right? And
sounds like about 1,000 people I know.
Yeah.
Nerds.
Yeah, exactly. So he wanted the scene where Kirk's fucking the green bitch and she turns into a monster and tries to kill him. And I said, that never happened. And they're like, well, yeah. Eddie, I said, no, it never happened. It's 2 different episodes. You're talking about Man Trap and, oh my God, I just went absolutely blank on it. The one with Yvonne Craig.
Cirroc knows.
Oh, Yvonne Craig.
You know that?
After the Man Trap.
No, it's 3rd season. It's towards the end of the 3rd season. Anyway, and Eddie gets on the phone because he's sitting there in this meeting, and he says, "Do you know the one I'm talking about?" Because we already knew each other. He said, "You know the one I'm talking about?" I said, "I swear to God, Eddie, it's you're mixing two different things." So his writers had to go through all 79 episodes, and they never found it. Wow. So he ended up with the shot of Yvonne Green on top of Kirk and pulling out the knife from under the pillow and trying to stab him, saying, "But I have to kill you. You're my lover." Or "You're my lover, I have to kill you," whatever. So, yeah. A lot of people think they know the show really well. I had a battle with a licensee once. They needed a shot of McCoy in the sick bay using a tricorder. And I said, "Nope, never happened." Got all his scanners, biobeds, and everything, little medical scanners. So they had to go through all the episodes. I better turn my email off so it stops bleeping. That won't affect this, right?
We didn't even hear it. But here's a question that I've been sitting on this whole time. This is really what I'm waiting to hear. I've been like chomping at the bit for it. Out of all the time you worked on or were around Star Trek, what was the most surprising thing? What just kind of blew you away, or was something that you weren't expecting, or you just told other people and they were shocked by it?
A lot of things I can't repeat.
Damn it.
No, I'd rather tell you the best
sure.
time ever was when the 20th anniversary was about to happen. And the studio wasn't going to do anything. And Gene felt that they should do something because there was so much anticipation for the fourth film. The Next Generation was in development, very, very early stages at this point. A lot was going on. So I went to my angels in the front office, and the one who I felt would help agreed that we should do something. And out of that came the 20th anniversary party that was held on the back lot, which turned out to be the hottest ticket, in ages, that everybody wanted to go to this, and we couldn't have everybody. Mm-hmm. We invited and got nearly 200 actors who had appeared in the original series.
Wow.
We got directors, we got writers, we got, crew. We didn't have anybody who would have been inappropriate to have there. For instance, Michael J. Fox crashed the party because he was a huge fan. Robin Williams crashed the party. He was a huge fan. So we had, the soundstage was packed. And it was stage 10, right next to 9, where all the standing sets were from the feature films. So the curving corridor, the bridge, the transporter, the sick bay, and so on, all those sets. And again, because of Earlets, everything was lit. They had all the blinkies going. Lots of fans because all the sets used to get really hot. If you ever watch the bloopers, the second the scene was done, they would say cut, and you'd see all the lights go out in the background because everything would get so hot they couldn't even touch the panels. They had music playing in the corridors. They had black curtained out anything that wasn't like a part of the set. And we had a corridor from 10 to 9. So you kind of walked through this black tunnel and you walked into the set. It was really incredible. And seeing people who hadn't seen each other in 20 years at that point, people who worked on episodes together, all the reunions, it was truly an amazing event. And a huge cake in the shape of the Enterprise, which was mint chocolate, as I remember, and Gene and the cast up on the stage with Frank Mancuso and a few other people in the studio cutting the saucer, and then the caterers served everybody. Everyone was there except for DeForest Kelley and George Takei. George was in Japan for his grandmother's 105th birthday.
Wow.
And DeForest Kelley was on his way to England for his very first convention over there, and he did not want to disappoint the fans. Good for D. That evening, and I was in uniform from the movies, as were all of my helpers.
Which uniform, though? Are we talking about the motion
Star Trek
picture?
4.
Okay.
No, Star Trek 4, the red or burgundy wool gabardine. Hot, but thank God it wasn't a hot night. So we were all very warm. No, all the catering staff were in costume. And no, it was an incredible evening. It was pretty exhausting, but a lot of work to put it all together. But Earl made sure that absolutely everything was covered. It was really, it was one of the, and people talked about it for years after that. There never was such a party for the next gen or for anything else, really.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember how you met? How or when or where the two of you met? You and Cirroc, yeah.
It was during the first season, when the show was still new, and your mom was around a lot. And I remember talking to her in your trailer. And again, you were just, I mean, when I say little, I mean, I think you were the shortest cast member, even shorter than Armin, and he ended up being the tallest cast member. So, yeah. No, I mean, I never really needed much other than an occasional signature from Cirroc on various items going to charities or whatever. So it's not like we spent hours talking or anything. But I saw him frequently.
I felt like Richard, you were like the godfather of the show in a lot of ways of Star Trek in general. And you kind of moved around. You talked about the 5 departments that you were working with, from the motion picture, television, and the licensing. And to me, there's not too many people that wear that hat, where they're able to kind of go into different
hats.
Right, all those hats, and go from the administration building to the licensing area, down to the set. There's not too many people that have their their foot in the fire in those kinds of departments. So I kind of felt like you were the godfather / Q of the Star Trek universe. You just always popped up, and you were
I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know how it started, but and it started originally with the first series. Although I wasn't there when it was, made, but I was there for all the films, at least up to 6. And I used to end up in the actors' trailers with them, and I became a sounding board, and that was true with the Next Generation, and that was even true of DS9, which I didn't work on myself. I remember sitting in some of the Voyager's actors' trailers and just, why me? I don't know, but they would just kind of unload somebody to talk to. And some of the stuff that Jerry told me was like, oh my God. And some of the stuff Bob Picardo told me. Even Ethan, and always, I enjoyed it. I couldn't get up on stage at conventions and talk about this stuff. Again, a lot of it was really private. So not the sort of thing that I could then, I'm going to write a book, which I certainly could, but no, I would never embarrass everybody.
Well, you could still write a book. You just don't have to include those.
No, I actually can't.
Or just don't name them. Just be like, a tall blonde actress on Voyager who shall remain nameless.
With an incredible rap.
Not 6 of 8 and 8 of 10.
Yeah. No, I mean, I won't name the actress, but I was in a dressing room and they were changing and the top came off and they were topless. And it's like, actors are not, they're hardly shy. I remember taking the Bristol Starfleet Registry, a fan club from Bristol, England, to Patrick's trailer to meet him at his request. They had just visited the set as his guests, and he'd been wrapped for the day. And we finished, went up to his trailer, and they're all behind me. And I knocked on the door, and he said, "Come in." And I opened the door and started to come in. And he's standing there with a towel, completely naked. And I stopped in the doorway. And of course, bam, 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 behind me as they all collided with me. And I said, "Patrick, I have the fan club with me." And he said, "Oh, just a minute." And he threw on a bathrobe. And we came in, and the thing that made me laugh, he apologized for his bare feet. And I was thinking, yeah, if they'd been here 10 seconds earlier, yeah. No, he always made me.
Was it this bathrobe that he was?
Oh, God.
No, it was
Oh,
the bathrobe that Bill Tyson had made for everybody. Yeah.
Oh, man.
First season. Yeah.
I'm sure you've got like a ton of stories that you can't tell, but the ones that you are telling are hilarious and so amazing, because you hear about Michael J. Fox and people that you never knew, cared about Robin Williams.
Yeah, Michael was on the lot trying out for the part of Scotty's nephew in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, a role that went to Eisenberg.
Aaron. Yeah.
Aaron Eisenberg. No.
Oh.
No, another.
There was another Eisenberg in Star Trek.
Yeah, the one who played his nephew.
The Wrath of Khan.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, he was so horribly disappointed. Michael and I had worked on a film earlier than that.
So they turned down Michael J. Fox to play the nephew.
Yeah, that's what he wanted to be, and it was a bigger part originally.
Okay.
Starts with an E. Eisenman, not Eisenberg. Eisenman. Anyway, he's walking back across the lot to his car, and he runs into Gary David Goldberg, who asked him if he was an actor, and he said yes. And he brought him to his office, and he got Family Ties.
Oh, wow.
Just amazing. If he'd gotten the part on Star Trek, that never would have happened. He wouldn't have run into Gary.
That changed his whole career.
Ike Eisenman. Finally remembered the name.
Eisenman.
I Googled it too. I couldn't find it, so I'm glad you remembered.
We'll try Ike Eisenman.
Well, yeah, that'll work.
Yeah, and then the character was killed anyway. So,
you're still better than Google, Richard. You're still
true.
faster and better than
in there somewhere. What was it? Gene once described my brain as a veritable cesspool of useless knowledge, but convenient.
Useful but convenient.
Yes. Useless but convenient. Anyway, Michael and I, got to know each other certainly better than we had on the film set, and when he was shooting on 2. And I just found out how big a fan he was. So when we had that party, I couldn't throw him an invitation, but I let him know where and when, and he just showed up, and I just go on in. So Robin showed up without any warning at all in this incredibly bright Hawaiian shirt. And I'm like, everybody's dressed, but all right, go ahead. Couldn't say no to him. He was always really funny. I discovered how big a fan Eddie Murphy was, and he was almost in Star Trek 4.
Really? Do you know what part it was?
Golden Child. He couldn't do both, so he did Golden Child.
Do you know what part it was going to be?
Yeah, he worked in a trash truck, and they were in Golden Gate Park, which was Will Rogers State Park, when the ship lands, and all the wind is blowing trash cans and everything. And the driver of the truck, which was going to be Eddie's character, originally in the script says, "What the fuck?" But they changed that. It was like, what the hell? And that was it. That was the extent of that part. It was going to be a lot bigger. He pursues them around because he sees them come out, and he's like pursuing them around the city. So there was more to the part than what it ended up. It ended up being nothing. But no, he got Golden Child, so he was disappointed. But you can't have everything. There were other actors who really, really, really wanted to be on Next Gen, and frequently, like Gene Simmons, as in Spartacus, not Kiss. She was a huge fan. Yeah, she was a huge fan, and she even already had a production jacket because a friend of hers worked on the show, and he'd gotten her a production jacket. She was that big a fan with her name stitched on it. So when she showed up, oh my God, all the older elite at the studio really wanted to be there to see her. And when she went into the dining room, it was amazing how many actors and executives were coming up and introducing themselves, saying, I worked with you on Desiree, I worked with you on, whatever, all the great films that she did back in the 50s and 60s. So, yeah, there was this list. Robin Williams was almost on the show, and at the last minute was it The Wise Guy? And couldn't do it, and that really upset Rick Berman. So they put in...
do you have any idea what role that was for Robin? What it would have been?
Oh, yeah, no. Rasmussen, was that the character's name? Who supposedly was from the 29th century and was there to observe them.
Oh, yeah, and they ended up giving it to the actor that played Max Headroom, right? What's his name? Right, they gave it to him. Yeah,
we've had him at a convention, and of course I'm blanking again, but it'll
right.
It'll show up at some point.
That's a fun role.
A lot of people, like Stephen Hawking, got their wish.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of other people, it just never happened. And some people who absolutely shouldn't have been able to work on the show because it was just a job. It was so obvious. And one of the worst was Lawrence Tierney. You know the name? Famous actor from the 30s, 40s, 50s. Played a lot of heavy. He was Dillinger, famously. I think it's what made his career. And he couldn't remember his lines because he was already an older actor at this point. And he just was ignoring the director. Yeah, he shouldn't have been there. And I remember Patrick, who never lost his cool, stepped out of the set, behind the set with Brent. They were in this scene with Lawrence Tierney. And Patrick just was, what the fuck, Bob? Whatever, losing it. And of course, I'm there with a bunch of visitors. I'm like, Jesus, Patrick, they can hear you.
His voice carried, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I don't think you're doing Soda Voce at all. But yeah, just going through the motions. The best actors, this was no secret, were people who had really good theater training and could do broad. Because Star Trek is not small, it's big, even though it's TV. So anybody with Shakespearean experience, William Shatner, Patrick Stewart, so on, definitely helped.
Yeah, Sirach and I definitely talk about the Shakespearean actors. It always shows, and it always seems to be the ones that are the most prepared and give the best performances on Star Trek. Well, Richard, can you believe it? We're just about out of time.
No,
already.
We started.
I know. That's what it felt like to us too. But boy, this has been really great. I really hope that you can come back and chat with us again. I have to confess, I didn't know much about you until Sirach told me about you, and it turns out you are just a wealth of knowledge, not just for Gene and them while you're working there, but just for all of us that want to know all the inner workings and the details and stuff. Sirach, this was a great idea. Really
Richard has been the godfather, like I said, of Star Trek, really the unofficial godfather. And I want to say also before we leave that you've done so much charitable work for different people across the spectrum all of these years, Richard, and I want to say thank you for that. And I also want to let the people know that you've been, battling your own personal medical issues, and the people out here can really support you by prayers and good wishes, and and making sure that they give you well wishes so that we can make sure we have you around for a long time to come.
Yeah, I'm doing okay on that front, and I'm looking forward to doing more conventions. I haven't given up on that, and hopefully, I'll see you at Vegas is now in December if it happens. That's not that far away. Doesn't look like it right now, but it may happen. And if not next summer, hopefully by then with the vaccine, we'll be able to go back to doing conventions again. I hope to see you, Ciroc. I hope to see you, Ryan. And again, I've seen you walking around the show.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Now we won't just be strangers passing by the vendors room.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. Richard, thank you so much for joining us. This has been an absolute pleasure. Really hope to talk with you again in person and on some kind of forum like this again. Really looking forward.
And I'm sorry I've had problems sometimes pulling names out and things.
It's better than us.
I'm on 16 different medications.
Oh, wow.
And 2 of those are radioactive in order to try to beat the cancer. So I know I'm having some memory problems. Nothing huge.
Pretty impressive still. Yeah. Very, very impressive nonetheless. Richard.
Yeah, it is impressive. And not only that, but I think you only scratched the surface about how deep you can go. We can literally, this interview could go 10, 20, 30, 40 hours.
Yeah. Let's try it.
One surprised me. And it's not the greatest one, but I don't think he's still around. I think he's passed. So I can say it. We had, I'm blanking on his name now. From
Even
MASH.
better.
From MASH, yeah.
Alan Alda?
Charles.
That's the only one I know.
Not Charles Nelson Riley. Charles, anyway. And I thought, my group that I'm taking over there is going to be really impressed to see this guy because he's, a really well-known actor. And we walk into the set and he's having like a tantrum and he's swearing and he's being a complete asshole. And he was an asshole to my guests. And Alan Bernard, our sound guy, who was a great guy, he pulled out his earpiece and he just said, "Hey, shut the fuck up." and kind of surprised everybody because Alan was the coolest guy in the world. And apparently after we left, he tore a strip off him. And when I came back with the next group later on, he came to me and he apologized to me. So, okay, not a complete and total jackass. But everybody is not as cool as you think they might be. And Star Trek, despite the fact that it is that incredibly positive future, could be as political and nasty as anything else. And you have to kind of, watch your P's and Q's. I'm sure Ciroc knows there were people you did not want to piss off. So.
All right.
That's true.
There you go. I gave you a little
stay tuned next time. We'll talk about all the people not to piss off.
There you go.
All right. Well, Richard, thank you so much for everything. We'll have whatever information you'd like in the description box below of this video. And we'll catch you next time. All the best to you. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Everybody,
thank you, Richard.
Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye, guys.
What was it before Ciroc? Virtual Trek Con.
Virtual Trek Con.
Sounds like Cash Cab.